Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we've got another exciting update from the 2026 roller coaster project at Six Flags Magic Mountain, thanks to my buddy Dylan from Theme Park Obsession. So it is officially almost the end of February, meaning that this project had its permits filed almost 2 whole months ago. Now, to catch you up to speed, we've known about a project and more presumably a roller coaster in this area of the park for ages now. The Golden Bear Theater, which is next to Bugs Bunny World, has been realistically completely vacant since 2020. Now, eventually, within the last couple of years, the main building for the theater was completely demolished. And then after multiple months of little to no progress, we got the confirmation through the publicly filed permits that a brand new roller coaster was coming to that spot. More specifically, a Vekoma Thrill Glider coaster. Now, what that exactly is, we're not entirely sure, but what it's believed to be is an inverted coaster, meaning the track is above you, but while you're in a motorbike position, like on Tron Light Cycle Run or Pony Express at Knott's Berry Farm. Immediately after these permits were filed, though, they got to work. All of the trees got demoed within a couple of weeks, and now the grading process is completely underway. So, speaking of that, let's finally get a view of what's happening at the end of February. As we get a look at this, I do want to again say thank you so much to Dylan, my buddy from Theme Park Obsession, for grabbing this footage, and you should definitely go check out his many construction updates over this project that come out at least once a week. Our first views are closer to full throttle because this project is going to take over that entire mountainside. We really get a good view at how bald this hillside is now, which is just crazy, and you get a perfect insight of where the coasters really were within all of that forest, and more specifically, Gold Rusher and its second lift hill stick out like a sore thumb. You get to see this still standing but not operating Superman and the beginning of its launch track really easily now. And something that's great to see all over this bald hillside is the fact that there are plenty of markers all throughout, pretty much signifying where certain things will be placed for the project, and more than likely, a lot of these are going to be for the individual footings or those concrete cylinders that sit in the ground that will then put the supports on top of to make sure the ride is secure and good to go for many, many decades. It really is remarkable seeing it from this side of Full Throttle's entryway, and the fact that everything just seems so barren behind Full Throttle now. This is something I brought up in the last couple of videos, but I used to think of that hillside as just never-ending forest, which it really gave that viewpoint, especially when you were waiting in line for Full Throttle. Now you just look up the hillside and go, oh yeah, Gold Rusher and Superman are literally 150 feet away from me. As we pan towards the right, you can actually see that there are still some of those old growth trees at the very back and top of the hill near Superman's launch track, and then just beyond that you have a very clear view of the top of Crazanity, which was a flat ride that opened back in summer of 2018, and I was actually there on opening day, funnily enough. And while it was still kind of weird to get used to that ride in general in the skyline, seeing it this easily from that vantage point is even weirder. At the very bottom of the shot, though, you can see the main queue for Full Throttle and where it heads directly up into the station. Now, I do have a question for you guys I hope you can answer in the comments, as I have not been to the park in almost 2.5 years at this point, which is crazy to think about. Hopefully that changes very, very soon. But how is the temperature in that part of the queue? I always knew it was a little bit warmer, especially underneath that tent and that walkway from the tent to the ramp, but at least the rampway was a little bit cooler because there was extra shade and a lot of foliage. Now that there's no foliage, is it just baking over there? Let me know. One really great thing I want to mention again, though, is from this vantage point, there are plenty of markers that are already placed down, which is incredible news, meaning that the grading process is potentially nearing its final stages, at least in those certain areas. And we for sure know already from Six Flags that this ride will be a first of its kind in North America, and it will open next year. So it will be very interesting, especially in the next couple of months, once we start to see those markers become physical pieces of the ride or its foundation. Although I will say, because of the terrain changes with this ride in particular, it might take a little bit longer than you'd think. I mean, a perfect example is Tatsu, that's almost right next door, and an even better example is Universal Studios Hollywood new roller coaster, Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift, which, even though most of the track is already implemented into the ride's layout, it still won't open for another year. And a lot of that has to do with its hillside setting and making sure all the ground sets perfectly for all of the ride to sit atop it. As we start to take a walk past the Full Throttle bar and towards Bugs Bunny World, you can get another vantage point that introduces us to the changes they've made to the big mass of concrete that was the seating area and the stairways for the Golden Bear Theater. We'll get another view at it in just a moment, but something I do want to mention when it comes to these stairs and seats, a lot of this will just be covered directly in dirt, at least from what the permits were showing. And something really interesting is the fact that there are not any planned footings to be placed in that concrete whatsoever, with the exception of a couple of them at the very top, but they're right on the edge of where the concrete ends anyway. Now, twisting back, looking at Full Throttle again, you can get some more clear views of Gold Rusher as well as Full Throttle going up into the loop and around the hillside. There's still quite a few trees, at least around Gold Rusher itself, but that view is a lot clearer from this side, which is still very, very odd. You can see a handful of markers, but there is still a lot of debris that will need to be cleared out eventually. And I can only assume, since this is one of the steeper portions of the terrain, that this area will probably take a lot longer than some of the other sections of the build process. Looking back up the seats, you can see a lot of dirt has been moving, especially to the left-hand side of our viewpoint. So this movement of earth seems to be progressing along in the past month, which is great news, and eventually that will be graded down perfectly and then settled, so we'll be able to continue on seeing maybe some track show up after some concrete's laid in. Granted, I will say that's probably a good couple of months off, at least as of now, but still, it's something to look forward to in the future. Seeing these ginormous trees in the background, though, does make me mourn for the trees that we lost, just because most of them were around that size and had been on that hillside for the same amount of time. And the last time we saw this much dirt and this little tree in this section, I think, was when the park first opened over 50 years ago. As we're getting one of our last looks at the project as of now, you can actually see there are some excavating equipment around, which is great to see, and even some pathways up the dirt mound, which is cool to see too, meaning that they have been moving vehicles quite a bit up and down to make sure that this process keeps going as smoothly and quickly as possible. But I won't lie, I am getting a lot of flashbacks to the West Coast Racers construction and Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster, more so West Coast Racers for sure, just because there was a lot more earth movement that we could see more directly, but obviously not to this level, which is kind of wild. And it does make me think about that infamous comment from one of the park presidents over 10 to 15 years ago, stating that they would never build something as big as Tatsu ever. But here we are in 2025, seeing something built in a similar manner on that hillside, and it just makes me wonder, maybe something a lot bigger than Tatsu is possible in the future. With all that said, I want to say thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my different viewpoints of the construction process of this 2026 ride. And if you want other views, make sure to go check out Dylan from Theme Park Obsession. He's got plenty of them, and they all look fantastic, and you can get his insights as well. But with that all said, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.